Hey soccer fans, Nick back with another episode of the Feed the Fire podcast, where we're talking all things Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer. We have wrapped up the Chicago Fire's preseason. They finished their last match in the Coachella Valley Invitational against the Portland Timbers. We've got a few notes to go over on that. We're going to continue our series on player profiles. This time, we've got a long list of midfielders that we are going to go over. And then if we got a little time at the end of the show, there's a few headlines involving the stadium and some preseason awards and recognition given out by some of the MLSsoccer.com and analyst team pundits here that will check in and see where Chicago falls in their rankings. If you want to follow along on the show, please, on social media, give me a follow at GlassHouseSoccer or email me glasshouseSoccer@gmail.com. And be sure you like, subscribe, rate, review, do all those great things to increase the exposure of the show and to continue the conversation around the Chicago Fire and soccer in America. All right, let's get into it now. Like I said, the Fire ended their preseason in a match against the Timbers. Unfortunately, it was a 4-3 loss. They give up a goal on a corner kick, the last kick of the game. Did I jinx it in the last episode talking about the set-piece coach and is he going to fix the set-piece defense? Maybe I did. And if I have that much sway in the universe, especially with the Chicago Fire, I just don't know if I believe it. It seems like that's the only thing I can influence these days. But anyway, the Fire still showed some defensive issues. Brady came up with several really good saves, including at least one on a breakaway, but ended up giving up 4 goals. That has been a familiar scene when we do see the Chicago Fire struggle over the last couple seasons. It's still Chris Brady playing a great game, having 4 or 5 saves, but opponents getting clean looks in and around goal, defensive miscommunications, giving up a set-piece goal like that, and then it goes from a potential 2-1 Fire victory or 3-3 draw, something like that, to a 3-2 loss or a 4-3 loss. So these are the things that the Fire still have to clean up. Now, I do think in preseason, and I think this is true across all sports, usually your offense is a little better to begin the season than the defenses are, and the defenses kind of have to catch up a little bit as we get into the season. Now, that's what Coachella was for, right? We want the Fire to be ready game 1 of the regular season, firing on all cylinders, pardon the pun, and being ready to play the best defense that they can. So I'm confident that Greg Berhalter is going to make sure that the Fire in game 1 are much better set and prepared defensively than they have been in Coachella Valley. Also, I did get a lot of comments on social media from South African fans who are here to see their boys Dje and Boazi, and they always say Boazi, anytime he gets subbed out, the Fire immediately concede a goal. Well, that has been true. That does seem to be the case, but I don't think it's a matter of Boazi steps out and all of a sudden the Fire are a terrible defensive team. I think you have to look at just what the coaching staff for the Fire's goals were in the preseason. And while I don't have any direct quotes from them, just in my opinion, the goals are to see player combinations, who plays well with who, try some different tactical wrinkles, try some different formation shapes, especially along the back line if they're going to play with 2 center backs, 3 center backs, if they want their wing backs high up the field, or if they want them a little bit more central, middle third, to be a little bit more of an outlet. Those kind of things. Where is the defensive midfielder going to set up? Are they going to be a better outlet, a better option for those center backs to progress the ball? And how are those D-mids playing defense? A lot of the time when you saw Boazi subbed out, it was a complete line change at halftime. So it was a new set of players, new system, new approach. You still had opposing starters in the game who, again, had already played a half or a large chunk of the match, going up against the guy who's just coming in. So there are some different wrinkles. Also, you saw Chris Brady being subbed out at half in the first couple of matches as well. So again, Boazi is an excellent defender. I am not taking that away from him. He has shown himself, at least this preseason, to be very solid and put his name in contention for starter on day 1. Now, I still think it's Waterman and Elliott who will start day 1 as the veterans, but Boazi has shown that he is capable of doing that. But again, there were so many other factors. I wouldn't put it all squarely on how could Berhalter sub out Boazi. The other thing is you got a 20-year-old center back that you want to make sure that he's not overworked in his first preseason with the Fire, that he is ready to go at 100% on opening game this weekend against Houston. All right, some other notes from Coachella Valley in this final game against the Timbers. One of the big surprises throughout the CVI, throughout the preseason, was Chris Mueller. Great to see him back on the pitch. Cleared to play after a diagnosis of pericarditis last season that sidelined him for the entire season. He ended up with 2 goals and 2 assists in 3 games at the Coachella Valley Invitational. First game gets a goal, second game gets an assist, third game 1 of each. So he had a really good preseason. I doubt he is going to supplant Jonathan Bamba or Philip Zinkernagel as one of the starting wingers. But when you have a guy capable of finding the back of the net or setting up his teammates coming off the bench, I think the Fire will look really good if, for whatever reason, you're subbing off Bamba and Zinkernagel and bringing in Mueller and Haile Selassie. I think that's going to be an asset for the Chicago Fire again, especially as they look forward to having regular season, U.S. Open Cup, and Leagues Cup, and then hopefully a deep playoff run after that. Andrew Gutman did not play in this final game. He was listed in the starting 11, but picked up a knock in warm-ups, it appeared, or the morning of the match. So he did not play. By all accounts, it looks like the team is just being cautious with him. Similarly, Viktor Radojevic did not play at all this preseason. Even in the subs closed-door scrimmage, I don't believe he played. And the question is, how concerning is this, right? He's only 21, but hasn't played for the Fire, even practiced with the Fire as far as I know, other than some individual workouts since he signed last year with the club. So this is a guy, I know the Fire are looking at him as a future player, and we talked about him in our defensive player, our outside backs preview last episode, but it's starting to be concerning. This is a guy who came over injured, the club knew it, they accepted it, and now that they wanted to have him ready this season to start rotating him in, giving him a taste of MLS, start to develop his play, so that way in 1 or 2 years he can be the starter and they can lock him into a long-term contract, or they can look to transfer him depending on how great his development has been and how much interest there is from other clubs around the league or overseas. But that timeline is now at least half a season back. So this is a storyline to watch as the season goes on. How fit is Radojevic? How healthy is Radojevic? And is this just going to be a bad luck signing for the Fire? Are they not going to want to do business now with Red Star Belgrade? I don't believe that club has a history of kind of pulling fast ones on anybody. But that's also something to kind of keep a lookout. I haven't looked at any of their young transfers lately. So these are all things to keep in mind, and it's to say that hopefully this does not create a hole in the Chicago Fire's defense, a defensive unit they've been trying to rebuild. Another note, Jonathan Bamba once again sat out. He picked up a knock before the Austin match, their second of 3 preseason matches. Again, I think this is just precautionary, making sure that he's fully fit, and I expect him to start week 1. So overall, good preseason from the Fire. They scored, they identified defensive weaknesses, made some tweaks, integrated new players, still have the core from last year, which seems to have not lost a step on offense. Really excited to see Saletros, Lud, and D'Avilla start game 1 and really see what they can do as that starting midfield trio. Now, speaking of midfielders, let's transition into our midfielders' player profiles. We got a bunch of guys to go through here, so get comfortable, get yourself a drink or a coffee or whatever else you need, and let's dive in. So first of all, we have to take a look at the Chicago Fire's new signing, Anton Saletros. He's 29 years old, turns 30 in April, 6 feet, 161 pounds, from Stockholm, Sweden. He was acquired this offseason from AIK of the Swedish Allsvenskan, the top flight there, for a reported $3.1 million transfer fee. Now, looking at his playing history, he turned pro with AIK back in 2013 and has spent time in Sweden, Hungary, and Norway, as well as the French second division, before returning to AIK for the last 3 seasons and then signed with the Fire just this past offseason. In addition to his club play, he's got 19 caps for the Swedish senior national team, who are in the qualifying playoffs for the World Cup. They have a match on the 26th of March against Ukraine. So it's possible that we see Saletros get called into international duty against Ukraine, and should they make it, then possible we see him get called into the World Cup, which would be great for him. But yeah, you always got to balance that club versus country, right? So as a guy sitting here pulling for the club, I'm like, if they, I hope they make it, and I hope he doesn't get called up. And that way, is that the best of both worlds? I don't know, but I would love to see him get as many minutes as possible with the Fire. But I would personally, I would never root against someone to not represent their national team. So good luck to Sweden and good luck to Saletros in that regard. Now, in the preseason, we've seen him take a lot of free kicks. He seems to be gelling very well with Lud and Zinkernagel, and people are already throwing the nickname the Nordic Trio around, so that'll be fun to watch how they interact on the pitch. And, you know, we see it with a lot of other teams and high-profile players and a lot of stars, and of course Miami is the prime example of that, where at times it looks like, you know, Messi and Alba and Busquets and Suarez were just kind of like messing with other teams. Like they knew they were at a different level and were just having fun and messing around. I kind of get that to a lesser extent with some of the vibes here from these three guys. So hopefully that shows up on the pitch. Now, Saletros stylistically is more of a traditional midfielder. You could call him a box-to-box midfielder. He's known more as a playmaker and a creator than a goal scorer. And in fact, I'm looking at his appearances and goals on Wikipedia here, and his last 3 seasons at AIK, 69 appearances and 6 goals. So he is definitely the setup guy, or the pass before the pass kind of a guy, reads the field, know where the play is going to be. So he's the playmaker, he's the creator. And that's great. That is fine. You have Kuipers, you have Bamba, you have Zinkernagel. You can bring Mueller and Haile Selassie off the bench, 2 guys who do look for goal. You don't need to bring in a scorer. You know, even Lud can pitch in with a goal here and there if he needs to. So this was a great signing for the Fire. Number 1, not only to replace Gutierrez, but 2, someone who can actually create rather than looking for long balls, looking for quick 1-2 combinations. He's a guy that can kind of set up plays. So I love this. I love this signing, and I can't wait to see how he kind of runs the team from the field. His contract runs through 2028, and we do not have any salary data on him at this point, being it's his first year in MLS. Now, the next midfielder, we got to talk about another new signing, Robin Lud, 32 years old, 5'11", over 190 pounds, from Helsinki, Finland. Now, Lud has been with Minnesota United since 2019, one of their all-time franchise players here. He has amassed 170 regular season and playoff appearances, including 152 starts for Minnesota. Last season, 33 appearances and 28 starts. So he is still playing peak MLS soccer. He began his pro career in 2011, and has played for clubs throughout Finland, and I don't know if there was a Norwegian club in there. I forget where HJK is from. Also spent a few seasons for Panathinaikos in Greece, Sporting Gijón in Spain, before coming over to Minnesota United. Now, he can contribute on offense, and last season he had 5 goals, 6 assists, and in 2024, his best statistical season, 7 goals, 15 assists, and was named by Coach Wilfried Nancy to the All-Star squad, his first appearance as an MLS All-Star. He was one of the faces of Minnesota United, and I think this is a great signing by the Fire. They've got to shore up their central midfield, add some goal contributions after Gutierrez's departure. They bring in an experienced MLS veteran, again, a guy who can help integrate Saletros, a guy who can continue to be a bit of a mentor in the midfield for D'Avilla and some of these other younger players. And he is an upgrade defensively as well. He is definitely more of a defensive midfielder than Gutierrez. I don't mean to say he's going to play D-mid, you know, where he is that outlet for the center backs and is going to hang back a little bit more. No, I do expect Lud to move forward and get into the attack. But one area where Gutierrez needed to develop was his defensive presence, being that two-way player, and I think that's advantaged Lud this season. He was signed as a free agent with the Chicago Fire, and his contract runs through the 2028 season. Base salary last season was $1.55 million. He has a guaranteed salary last season of just under $1.7 million, though I assume he did take a cut to come sign a new deal with the Fire. 1, because of his age. 2, sometimes free agents can command a higher salary. But again, Lud, 2024 All-Star, excellent season last year. But compared to where we've seen other free agents in MLS sign, I don't believe he is at that high end of free agent. I could be wrong. But also the Fire are anticipating Andre Franco returning at some point this season. And so I think that also kind of reduced the value of Ludd on the Fire. So I wouldn't expect him to be making, again, $1.5 million or upwards of, but probably, or at least $1 million for his salary. That would be my best guess. We'll have to look for the MLS Players Association salary guide when it comes out towards the end of this season. Third midfielder we're going to profile here, Dje D'Avilla, 22-year-old, 6'3", 181 pounds from Atakube, Ivory Coast. He came up in Ivory Coast, going pro with Stella Club. Also played for Al Hilal. Also played for União de Leida. So he has played in Africa and Asia and Europe, Portugal, right? Ivory Coast, United Arab Emirates, Portugal, and now Chicago. So he's been on 4 continents in like 4 or 5 years. So the man is well-traveled, to say the least. Now, last season with the Fire, he played in 21 matches, including 11 starts, totaling 1,170 minutes with 2 goals and an assist, but 3 yellow cards and a red card. So more cards than goal contributions for Dje D'Avilla last season. He did play in all 3 postseason matches, but relative to his regular season, his performance in the postseason was much worse. Now, we could say that about several players. The Fire did get knocked out of the postseason, and they were playing against better competition, right, in a smaller sample size. So it's no surprise that they performed worse in that sense. But Dje didn't look like he belonged on the pitch against the top seed in the Eastern Conference, Philadelphia Union. So that is where he has to improve. And I say that because he's got to improve consistency of performance as well. In his first few MLS matches, he, again, looked like he didn't belong in the league from a technical standpoint. Physically, he's got the gifts. But from a technical standpoint, from a game awareness and tactics standpoint, he did not look like he belonged here. He looked very nervous, reactive, and not ready to play at this level. But the club and the coaches had confidence in him. He continued to improve and grow, and where we saw his first couple of starts were consistently below average performances, to his last 5 or 6 games, maybe he only had 1 or 2 bad performances. He's developed a little confidence, and with some rest and a full offseason, hopefully he can take another step towards becoming a position of strength for the Fire and not a position of, oh, what's he going to do now, kind of a thing for the Fire club and the fans. Oh, this was my note. Be a position of strength and not a worry or weakness. So we will see how he continues to develop. But again, still a young guy, right? 22 years old. Hasn't played at this level yet, but has adapted pretty well in his first season. He's big and he's strong, but again, he has to play like it. That's where I want to see him take a step forward, not just tactically, not just technically, but to be more proactive, be an aggressor or dictator of pace, rather than the one who's reacting, having to make a defensive decision because he's out of position or gets caught on the counter or turns the ball over and has to come back. Like, those are things that he can improve on that I'd like to see. Now, when he got stuck last season on which man to pick up or take the ball or passing lane, or, play the ball. Do I play the ball? Do I play the man? Or do I play the passing lane? He usually made the wrong decision. So he's got to do a better job of that as well. But again, this is a high upside signing for the Fire. And despite his struggles in his first season, he still has a lot of room to grow. And you know that this coaching staff is going to get him to grow and adapt even further this season. Last season, his base salary was $548,004. Yep, 548,004. I got to throw that extra $4 in there, I guess. And his guaranteed salary was $660,490. Contract runs through 2028 with a club option for 2029. Next on our midfield profiles, Sergio Oregel, 20-year-old from Chicago, 5'9", 143 pounds. He spent his entire youth and pro career with the Chicago Fire organization. He racked up 61 appearances for Chicago Fire 2 in MLS Next Pro between 2022 and 2024. And he's also been appearing for the U.S. Youth National Team since his U15 days, most recently getting appearances for the U20, getting 6 appearances for the U20 team in 2024. Also, I believe played in the Pan American Games, which is kind of like a de facto U23, U24 kind of a tournament. So he has gotten a lot of youth U.S. national team exposure. Now, last season, he was one of the homegrown midfield trio, along with Brian Gutierrez and Mauricio Pineda. Now, I kept waiting for him last season to develop, to take a big jump forward, both in physicality, getting bigger and stronger, and also being better with the ball at his feet. But then I reminded myself he was only like 19, 20 years old during the course of the season, and it was his first season as a starter, as a regular with this first team. He had 28 appearances, 25 starts, but only 1 assist. In 2024, he only got 11 minutes in a substitute appearance. So yeah, last season I'm like, come on, dude, what's going on? Why aren't you better? Oh, this is your first season with the senior team, essentially, and you were called in to start on day 1. So I'll give him a little slack there, and we did see him grow once he understood how Berhalter liked to play with that possession out of the back. We saw a lot of those early mistakes with the ball at his feet when he was getting pressed, not reacting quickly enough, not anticipating where the opposing press was going to come from, but that started to clear up throughout the course of the season. But then, as he improved, we also saw the rise of Dje D'Avilla, who then kind of supplanted him as the starter at the end of the season. Now, Oregel, I don't think projects as high as D'Avilla does when it comes to where is he going to peak during the course of his season. So the way I look at him and D'Avilla, they're both a defensive midfielder at this point in their careers, and probably that's where they're going to stay. I would expect D'Avilla, if he has 1 or 2 good seasons, if he has a really good 26, a really good shortened spring 2027 season, that we see D'Avilla transferred and we see Oregel rise and become that starting midfielder for the Fire, depending on whatever other transfers and players they bring in or develop. So that's what it looks to me, that Oregel will back up D'Avilla and then take over for him as your set starter in that 2027-28 new schedule season, and then be the starter for a year or 2 while the Fire get their next player of that position. If it doesn't pan out, though, Oregel he's got MLS experience. He knows what the league is about, being in it for the last several years. He is a competent player, and if things don't pan out for him in Chicago, he could thrive in an intra-league transfer. Montreal and Kansas City are looking at these intra-league transfers, and they'll throw a few bucks around and get some experienced players in who can hold things down for them while they come up with their next great plan that may or may not work if you're Montreal or Kansas City or even Colorado. So I do expect him to have a long career at the very least in MLS, but similar to Brian Gutierrez, he may need to move out of Chicago to challenge himself personally and professionally and take that next step in his career. But I'm a big fan of Oregel. I really hope he continues to progress and reach his potential here with the Fire. Last season, and here's the other thing too, he's got a good contract. His base and guaranteed salary last season was $113,400. They extended his contract last season through 2028 with a club option of 2029. Next up on our midfield list, one of the others in that homegrown trio from last year, Mauricio Pineda, 28 years old, 6'1", 172 pounds, from Bolingbrook, Illinois, and like Oregel, spent his entire pro career with the Chicago Fire. Now, because of his longevity with the Fire, he has set some benchmarks with this club. He was part of their academy in 2015 and 2016, which won a national tournament in 2015, or it was like the first ever MLS Youth Academy tournament. So it was some inaugural tournament that the Chicago Fire U15s won, with Pineda playing a role in that. After his time in the academy, he went to play for University of North Carolina collegiately, one of the top programs in the country, from 2016 to 2019, then signed his first team contract with the Fire in 2020. He's the first homegrown in Chicago Fire history to appear in 100 matches for the senior team, first homegrown in Chicago Fire history to start in 100 matches for the senior team, and has been an absolute I don't want to call him a utility player, but he can play center back, D mid, attack mid. He can play along that central and back line as needed. I wouldn't try him out as a wing back though, but he can play several positions. He is not an outspoken player where he's calling for starts, he's calling for changes, or whatever the case may be. The man has put his head down. He has done his work. He contributes to the Fire in any phase of the game, of training, whatever it is. He has been a great, reliable option off the bench when the Fire need it. We'll say if Elliott needs a rest, or if Waterman was off on international duty, or if Rogers or Cups couldn't give it a go, or they didn't like the matchup, Pineda could be there. He could also step into that D-mid role and just kind of help stabilize things. The man is an excellent passer, and that's why at Carolina, he was playing more of a defensive midfielder role, and I think that probably suits him a little bit better, though maybe he doesn't have the speed now to stay in that D-mid role and pick up some of these attacking players around MLS, but the man is an excellent passer, and I think he fits that part of Berhalter's system very well. So since joining the first team, he's appeared in no less than 21 matches each season with the Fire, and has usually started between 11 and 28 matches. His stats have diminished over the last 3 seasons with defensive additions by the club, but again, continues to step in whenever and wherever the club need him. Now, I always thought Pineda could have reached another level in MLS. I do recall, I think 4 years ago maybe, I sent in a message to Extra Time, the former podcast of MLS, saying after Pineda's rookie season, like, this guy could be in the mix for center back of the year, like some hot take that I had. I thought he had the potential for that at the time, and maybe he never did, but I think he was very much affected by the rotating cast of coaches that the Chicago Fire had, by a lot of the disunity that we have seen in the locker room over the course of Pineda's career. So I think there were a lot of external factors that kind of hampered his development a bit. Additionally, his time with CF2, there was no real integration between the second team and the first team. And yeah, I don't think he spent too much time with CF2, but still, when you don't have a unified system, you're getting different coaching styles, and it just doesn't fit. Anyway, all that to say, I really like this player. I really like having Pineda on the team. When you lose a guy like Brian Gutierrez, who has been with the Fire, who's a homegrown, who's a local guy, you need someone to kind of carry that on, and Pineda and Oregel can be those guys to do that for the Fire. Now, he did sign an extension last season. His contract now runs through 2027. Now, I haven't seen the contract terms. I assume that means through the calendar year 2027, and with the calendar shift, he could be one of those guys who might sign like a half-year extension, but he does have a club option for 2028 as well. So we'll see how that plays out. His base salary last season is $355,012, and a guaranteed salary of $475,169. All right, we've got four more to go here. I'm going to get through these as quickly as I can because we're already approaching a half hour here. Next midfielder, Andre Franco, the 27-year-old 5'10" midfielder from Lisbon, Portugal, joined the Fire last season on loan from Porto and made the deal permanent just this past November 2025. Came up with Sporting CP as his youth club, turned pro in 2018, played for Estoril for 4 or 5 seasons, played for Porto for another 3-4 seasons, and then comes over to the Fire and has joined permanently here. Again, he joined the Fire from Porto in August on loan, started 5 of the 6 matches in which he played, and registered 4 assists in his 6 games with Chicago. Impressive. You come to a new city, a new club, a new league, mid-season, and you still rack up 4 assists in your first 6 games. Unfortunately for Franco, for the club, and for the fans, he suffered a torn ACL in their 5-3 victory against Inter Miami, the one where they secured their postseason berth. Now, he's still recovering, did not play in preseason. I think ACLs can take, on a best-case scenario, a 6-month recovery. More likely, though, it is a 9-month or so recovery, sometimes taking a year plus to get back to 100%, not just physical strength, but mental strength to overcome the fact that you had that injury, that you don't want to favor the injury, that you just want to go back and play like you used to. Did not play in preseason, like we said, but was with the club in California doing his rehab and individual training. I expect he joins the first team after the World Cup break, but we'll have to see what updates we get throughout the season. You never know what setbacks there could be. Now, Franco is the creative midfielder that the club needs. Everything that I was praising Saletros for, that's what we had in Franco. Look, in those 6 games that he played, it was 402 minutes. It wasn't like full 6 games. It was only 402 minutes, and he got 4 assists. So almost an assist a game in that time, if you break it down by minute. Also, on kind of a related but not so related matter, I think his playing in the Club World Cup was influential in him signing with the Chicago Fire and with Major League Soccer. Like, it showed him what playing soccer in the U.S. could look like, and he was drawn to it. And if I recall, Berhalter said that it was Franco's side that contacted the club. It wasn't that they reached out to him. It looked like he enjoyed what he saw at the Club World Cup in the United States. Probably had heard some great things about Major League Soccer, obviously following it because of the stars that have come over recently, or at least paying attention to it. And he looked and found an up-and-coming team who needs a playmaker and said, hey, I want to be a part of this. So that's great. That is great. You don't even have to do recruiting. That is just great product drawing in interest. So kudos to the Fire organization for figuring that one out. Now, his contract runs through June 2028 with the club option for the remainder of 2028. His base salary last season was $650,000, guaranteed $697,083. But when he did sign a permanent transfer deal with the Fire, I believe he took a pay cut because obviously he was going to be missing the season, injured the ACL, not sure what his full strength is going to be when he comes back. So he did take a pay cut, and if he can play anywhere near the level of him prior to the injury, it's going to be absolutely one of the better deals on this roster. I assume there's some heavy incentives in there as well that could see his guaranteed money move up as opposed to the base salary, especially if there's incentives for games played, games started, maybe minutes, other things of that nature to incentivize him to rehab and get healthy and stay healthy. Next on our list, young Chicago Fire player Dylan Borso, 19 years old, 5'11", 165 pounds, from the fine city of Chicago. Now, he played with the Fire Youth Soccer, then the Fire Academy, and then CF2, so he has spent his entire career with the Fire organization. He has not made any appearances with the senior team, but with CF2 and MLS Next Pro, appeared in all 24 matches last season, starting 19 of them. He was recently called up to the U.S. Under-20s camp this past January. His base salary, $88,622, and his contract runs through the 2027 season with options for 2028 and 2029. So this is a young player getting his first consistent minutes training with the first team. He was with them in Coachella. I believe he did get minutes in the preseason. I think everybody got minutes in the preseason, whether it was in the scheduled matches or in that closed-door preseason friendly. That a lot of the, I'll call them bench players. I know Berhalter doesn't like to use the word bench players, or even subs to that matter, but Borso is a guy who they are developing and kind of keeping an eye on. I imagine he'll be tested this year to see if he can contribute to the senior team in some fashion in 2026. And we're still kind of unsure what his future could be. So keep an eye on Borso and see if he gets more time with CF2 or if he stays training with that first team and maybe get some appearances in some games, late game situation kind of stuff. I hope that he gets to the point where he can contribute minutes again during these domestic tournaments here. Next up, Robert Turdean, 16-year-old, 5'7", 135 pounds, from Niles, Illinois, where my mom grew up. So a lot of love for Niles over here. He holds the title for the youngest field player signing in club history. Only Gaga Slonina was younger when he signed. And Turdean is the 10th youngest field player acquisition in MLS history and received a club record homegrown contract. And if I recall, he had the second largest homegrown contract in all of MLS behind Kevin Sullivan. He's appeared for the U.S. Youth National Team under 15s, but he also has eligibility to represent Romania. I imagine he's going to continue representing the youth national teams at the higher levels now that he's turned 16. He's had some excellent play, I think he spent some time in Italy with the U.S. youth team or with one of the Fire Academy teams, racking up goals and stellar play overseas there. So this could be one of these future U.S. stars here coming up out of Chicago. So keep an eye on his career. Now he still just turned 16 years old, so for him to go from age 16 to playing against professionals in Major League Soccer is going to be a very tall order. And from a physical standpoint, 5'7", 135, it is going to be difficult for him to see the field in any meaningful way this season, or to, I'll just say it, to survive the physicality of some of these MLS players. If I'm an opposing player and I see a 16-year-old 135-pound kid come out there, I'm bodying him up. I'm going to play him so physically hard. And we'll let the officials figure it out. Are they going to give the benefit of the doubt to the Chicago Fire? Probably not. But to this kid making his first appearance ever? Probably not. Welcome to the league kind of a thing. So he has a lot of growing to do physically as well as technically and tactically, but he's a guy who can do it and will figure it out at some point. He spent his entire career with the Fire Academy in CF2, and I imagine he'll be getting most of his minutes this season with CF2 and MLS Next Pro. His base salary is $80,622, guaranteed salary of $113,549 last season, and his contract runs through 2028 with club options for 2029 and 2030. And finally, last on our list, but certainly not least, Sam Williams, 20-year-old midfielder, 5'9", from Tenafly, New Jersey. Last season, he did make 7 appearances, including 3 starts with the senior team, but only totaled 314 minutes. More of a Band-Aid for a depleted Fire squad he just had a lot of injuries defensively and in the midfield. Williams joined the Fire in March 2025 after the club acquired his homegrown rights from Red Bulls New York. By the way, the guys over at the Designated Player podcast, who they do cover the whole league, but they are Red Bull fans at heart, they were very disappointed to lose Williams. They really had their eye on him. He was a player who had great potential coming up through their system, and again, someone that they were disappointed to lose. Williams was one of Red Bull's top prospects and the first Red Bull Academy graduate to reach 2,000 minutes for Red Bull 2 in MLS Next Pro, and that was even back in the 2022 season. He went on to play collegiate soccer at North Carolina, which again, one of the top programs in the country. Last season, his base salary was $80,622, guaranteed salary $91,951. Signed a contract with the Fire that ran through the 2025 season with options from 2026 through 2028. So 3 years of options here for the Fire with Sam Williams. And so as a result of that, they didn't sign him to an extension. They picked up his option this year and then loaned him out to the Colorado Springs Switchbacks in USL Championship for this season. Now, this is a really good developmental move for him. This isn't, the Fire just trying to shove someone off somewhere or put him on a shelf somewhere until their contract is up. This is a good developmental move for him. Again, he's only 20 years old. Had a few minutes in MLS last season, but was mostly an MLS 2 player, right? MLS Next Pro player coming into the Chicago Fire organization. The Fire, as you've heard me, I'm out of breath here, have a lot of midfielders on their roster. So for Williams to take the next step up, I think the USL Championship loan is a great move. There's tons and tons of discourse about what's the better league, USL Championship, MLS Next Pro, or playing for a top program collegiately, and I think at this point USL Championship by far is the better competition. You have players who are in primes of their careers, guys who are making careers as pros playing in USL, as opposed to MLS Next Pro, where it is your quote unquote reserve team, your second team, guys who are still developing, guys, that are trying to integrate into a first team kind of a thing. So I think this is a step up in competition, training, all those things. This is going to be a great move for him to continue to develop. And if the Fire see that development, they got him on 2 more years of options. So why not bring him in if something happens with injury? Maybe Franco doesn't come back as expected. Maybe they get a big offer for, say, for D'Avilla or Oregel or something like that, and they can bring Williams and slot him in. So I think he's in the perfect place he needs to be for his development, and I hope he gets some future opportunities as well. I'm going to wrap up the episode with that. We'll talk about the stadium update, preseason predictions, and things from everyone over at the MLS analyst booth. Some things that I didn't like to hear. Some I'm just like, why would you rank the Fire there in your preseason rankings? But we'll pick all that up in the next episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening. Please rate, review, like, subscribe, do all those great things to promote the show via the internet algorithms, right? And as always, let's go Fire.